Do you want to lose weight but don't have time or energy to go to the gym? Want to shed those pounds without ever changing your lifestyle? Well, ladies and gentlemen, do I have news for you. For the first time ever, you can lose weight simply by carrying your phone with you. Introducing the Tone Phone. The Tone Phone is the world's heaviest and healthiest mobile phone case. Made from rubber-wrapped British steel, it fuses the concept of a mobile phone case with a dumbbell to create the ultimate weight loss device. That means every time you pick up your phone, you're working out. Every time you order a pizza, you're working out. Every time you phone to cancel your gym membership, yeah, you guessed it, you're already working out. The Tone Phone is featured in 250 publications worldwide, including the Daily Mail, CNET, and Time magazine. Except, I made it up. It's not real. I'm not a product designer. I work in marketing. It's my job to get my clients in the press. How did the Tone Phone end up in all those places? Because that's real coverage. Well, I just told some people. I mean, if we're counting, I told a few hundred journalists, and I guess they told a few million people. Okay, fine. I told a lot of people that it was real. But we didn't really make this thing, right? I'm not stupid. I wasn't trying to actually sell it. Which means as I was sat at home one night watching TV, I was more than a little surprised when this happened. I didn't send her that Tone Phone. Her team made it. I didn't send her that image. Her team found it online. I never said anything to any of the team at Ellen. Like I said, the thing never existed, and the more you think about it, there are clues that it couldn't. For example, in all the coverage, no one actually shows a real one, because we didn't have one. And if it's made from steel, how would it get a mobile phone signal? Thinking about it a bit more, how would it even fit in your pocket? But the most surprising thing out of all of this for me was that not a single journalist ever asked me if it was, well, you know.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news. Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news. Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news. Fake news.
This banana right here represents fake news.
You see, the Tone Phone launched in 2014, and back then, nobody was talking about fake news. It would take until October of 2016, when suddenly everyone was talking about fake news. Time, CNN, Trump, even the BBC, everyone was either being accused of being fake news, or was accusing others of fake news. And you see, over the years, we've trained ourselves to look out for biases and agenda when it comes to politics. But there's a whole world of fake news out there, much bigger than any of the political maneuverings, that, due to lack of a clear political or financial bias, goes completely unnoticed. How did we get here? Well, I'd like to take you back to 1994. There were only 3,000 sites on the entire internet. Google wouldn't launch for another 3 years. And the first few sites on the internet were trying to work out how to make money. This was the world's first ever banner ad. And it might look like a meaningless graphic, but over time the meaningless became meaningful. Because 44% of people that saw this, just under half, would click on it. And as quickly as people went online, they stopped noticing adverts. They became blind to these banner ads. And so, although this created an entire industry of online adverts, quickly enough, that 44% went down to 0.04%, 1/1000th of what it once was. And that created huge problems for industries that relied on adverts, industries like newspapers. That meant that as people stopped buying traditional newspapers and were reading more news online, the income from those online ads failed to bridge the gap. In fact, Rupert Murdoch used to describe his newspapers as rivers of gold. You probably won't feel sorry for him when by 2006 he said, "Sometimes rivers run dry." By 2012, for every $1 of new digital ad revenue, $55 of traditional print revenue had been lost. What do? Newspapers closed. They merged. The ones that remained made two key changes. The first was to take advantage of the new format. If you're printing a newspaper, there are only so many articles you can put in it, only so many pages that you can have there. The same isn't true online. You could have infinite content. And some newspapers took that as a challenge. And so the Washington Post, for example, now publishes online 1,200 articles, videos, and graphics every single day. That's 500,000 a year from a single newspaper. The second change they made was to cut staff, especially at the senior level, less editors checking work before it went out. And that meant more pressure on junior journalists to write as much content as possible for fear that they would be next on the chopping board. In fact, the average journalist at a national newspaper is now expected to write up to 15 articles a day. That's one every half an hour. I spent longer choosing this emoji. To be that fast, you have to have a constant stream of content coming to you, and you have to trust it, because there is no time to fact check. But the reducing value of these adverts was problems for companies too. They still needed to get in consumers' minds. They still needed to sell stuff. So they seriously started to ramp up PR budget. More PRs with more stories, more aggressively selling in to far less journalists. That created a huge bottleneck. The average journalist at work now receives 800 pitches a day. That's a new email in their inbox every 36 seconds. What do you do when your inbox is lighting up with an email every 36 seconds? I would never open Outlook again. But these journalists are way smarter than me. So what they do is they scan through their inbox and they look for the stories that pop out at them, the ones that immediately leap out and stand out amongst the crowd, in the hopes that when they write the article, the same will be true for their article, so it will get more views, it will make more ad income for the newspaper. The problem is that the truth often doesn't stand out the most. The truth, although it's the most credible, often isn't the most incredible. And that means that PRs are massively incentivized to soup up the stories they sell in. They're massively incentivized, if I'm honest, to lie. Lies that journalists are way too busy to ever question or check. And in any case, a lot of what's now pitched in is pitched in as new research, which is almost impossible to fact check, even if you wanted to. Here are some examples. The places your home will have made you more money than your job. Translation: buying property could make you lots of money, said mortgage company. Six biggest workplace lunchtime taboos. How annoying are your colleagues, says job site. And my personal favorite, Stock Up Saturday, October 15th. It's another way of saying, we put out all the Christmas stuff yesterday, why aren't you buying it yet? And by the way, when you come here, you better be spending at least £600, or you, sir, are the Grinch, says Asda. But look, I know we've had dubious facts online forever, and we've had dubious facts in adverts forever. Take, for example, this Del Monte advert.
In a recent test, the majority of people preferred the taste of Del Monte to the leading juice brand.
That's really nice.
Really, really fresh. Do you mind if I have another?
Really zesty.
Well, it's lovely and sweet. My kids...
Wait a minute. I have so many problems with this advert. Seriously, I created a list. 1, 144 people? I have more friends on Facebook. 2, non-chilled juice? Who drinks orange juice at room temperature? 54% of 144 is 77.76 people. How do you end up with 0.76 of a person? The answer is you round up. It's not even 54%. But let's imagine it is 54%, and they got 54% of their best friends on Facebook to drink this non-chilled juice. Even 54% is another way of saying it's a coin toss whether they found it any better than any of their competitors. But it's an advert, and we know to take adverts with a giant pinch of salt. We don't have our guard up when it comes to editorial, though. We trust Ellen. We trust that that thing printed in a newspaper is news. That means it gets believed. And that means you can come away from a newspaper now less informed than when you started. I never sent an email to Ellen, much less a tone phone, which means that the Ellen coverage was actually an example of something else that makes this whole thing much worse. An example of something called churnalism. Here's what churnalism is. If you're a journalist, you receive a press release. That press release now looks a lot like an article. There's a reason for that. You tweak it a little bit and you publish it because you can get that done in 5 minutes. And because newspapers have merged, it doesn't just appear on one newspaper. It appears on 10, 20, 30. It can appear on up to 100 different newspapers, exactly the same article. And journalists do this manually too. Everyone remember the gold dress last year? Everyone wrote about it. Everyone wrote exactly the same article about it because no one had anything new to add. They just wanted the eyeballs. They wanted to be part of the conversation, even if they were regurgitating what everyone else already was saying. And that means if something untrue is published online, it can spiral really, really quickly. In 2016, we worked with a bona fide coin expert to work out what coins you might find down the back of your sofa that might make you rich. Just as we were about to publish the piece, the Royal Mint had effectively lost some trial £1 coins. They'd made their way into circulation. They were rare and therefore valuable. And our expert told us that you could identify these coins because they'd be the only 2016 new £1 coins with 2016 actually written on them. So that is what we told the Mirror, which was read and published by someone at The Sun, which was read and republished by someone at the Daily Mail. And then it began to spiral. It was about this time that we got a call from someone at Virgin Radio, wanting to speak to one of our experts on air. We said, absolutely, this is fantastic. He went on air, and the presenter explained excitedly that he'd been down the bank, and that he had a bag full of £1 coins. And he would go on to explain every single one of them had 2016 printed on it. Could he be rich? It turned out the Royal Mint had made an exception, and indeed had printed some coins with 2016 on them. I'd later find out it was 1 billion of them. But our expert had followed established precedents, and we trusted our expert, so we never checked in with the Royal Mint. The Mirror had never checked in with the Royal Mint. Nobody in a chain of news now covering multiple newspapers and hundreds of thousands of readers had had the time to check in with the Royal Mint. And it was at this stage that eBay was lighting up with £1 coins being sold for slightly more than they were worth, which, to be clear, was precisely £1. Now, at this stage, we could have done nothing. We had the coverage, we had the views, we had the links, and that is what our clients pay us for. But we went back and we got it fixed because it's the right thing to do. What's important to know, though, is that there was absolutely no commercial incentive in doing that. Journalists weren't annoyed. They were busy writing the other 14 articles for the day. And every time we contacted one of them, we risked them taking down the article in its entirety. And there was no way we could charge the client for any of this time. From a commercial perspective, it was just a bad idea to get it fixed, which means that if something is printed online that's wrong, that's untrue, it usually stays uncorrected, it usually stays untrue forever. But why does this matter? Like, they're light-hearted articles. Even if they are untrue, they're not hurting anyone, right? I disagree. There's something just plain wrong about reading a newspaper and coming away less informed. And in any case, when I said that it remains untrue forever online, that's not entirely true, because I found that anything online for long enough becomes true. Here are 3 examples. In October, we did the maths to work out which actor provided the highest return on investment of any actor in Hollywood. And you'll never guess it. That guy from Mighty Ducks, Emilio Estevez, has the highest return on investment of any actor in Hollywood. And Brad Pitt's the worst. That's incredible, right? Journalists at E! News, NBC, ESPN, and 200 other publications worldwide thought so. And look, I've not gone back to my old ways. This is technically true. But it's a quirk of him having been in a lot of films in the 80s when films were making more money and they were paying actors less. It doesn't mean that if you want to make a hit movie, you should hire Emilio Estevez. But if you read it on its own, it can be really easy to misinterpret. And it now appears as a single line on his Wikipedia page. How did it get there? Well, pretty much anything published in a proper newspaper makes its way online into Wikipedia. But people trust Wikipedia more than they trust journalists. Part of the reason for that is because journalists, when they're beefing up their articles, turn to Wikipedia for extra content, which means that when anyone writes about Emilio in the future, they will probably include this factoid, which means that if anyone tries to remove it from Wikipedia in the future, then there'll be hundreds of sources that people will turn to say, no, this stays here, it's true. In a decade's time, it will be utterly impossible to work out that this came from a marketing campaign. It will have become true. In the wake of the financial crisis, we wanted to prove that the so-called stock market gurus didn't really know what they're talking about. When we crunched the numbers, we worked out that they could only guess the right way that a stock would go 55% of the time. Just about the same as a coin flip, though still 1% more than Del Monte's 54%. Now, we argued and argued and argued about the data for this piece. We ended up with a system that we thought was flawed, but fair. It said what we already believed, that you shouldn't trust self-appointed experts. After all, it's not like we're writing an academic journal, right? Except, it's now taught on the financial theory course at the University of Basel. If you didn't trust a random spread betting company, our client at the time, you probably trust an academic. But it's the same research. For his clients now, at least, this is true. And these survey results make their way most worryingly into parliaments. Here's your friend and mine, Oxford-educated George Osborne, quoting tax auditors KPMG to say that for their clients, at least, the new tax rules are working out just spiffy. Can't imagine why they're saying that. But it's in Hansard now, which makes it true. Anything online for long enough becomes true, and over time the meaningless becomes meaningful. This is marketing bump affecting the world's single largest source of knowledge, affecting what you learn at university, and affecting the taxes you and your employers pay. I'm not saying that all marketing campaigns are bad or dangerous, just that an increasingly large amount of the news that you now read is actually one of these campaigns hiding in plain sight. When they make their way online, no one is in control of where they end up, and everyone is disincentivized at every point to try to fix something if it goes wrong. Everybody's screaming about fake news, but the news that they're screaming about, news with a political agenda, is just the tip of the iceberg, or as Ellen might say, the top of the banana. We open a newspaper and we read an ad that says you can regrow your hair in 24 hours, and we roll our eyes. We turn the page and we find out in an article that an optician has found that those that wear glasses are seen as more empathetic. We tell all our friends without thinking. We have started to consume news in the same way we do entertainment. We relax, we sit back, and we enjoy it without being critical, without analyzing it. It's time that that changed. It's time that we start being as cynical towards news articles as we are to traditional adverts. Often, they're the same thing. We have to question why so much of what we read in newspapers now just confirms and establishes our existing biases rather than pushing us to think differently. So the next time you're reading the news, be careful, be cynical, because you could just be reading fake news. Thank you.